coffee with Bruce once, and then you've lost him. But when you have a guy that has that kind of charisma, I mean, it's the old thing. He could read a phone book and you'd be glued to it. So when he's talking about something he's passionate about, it's even more compelling. In fact, Bruce Lee, in his own words, was the film that I sent Leonard that convinced him to allow me to do Leonard Peacock, in his own words.
And you saw Tarantino's depiction of Bruce Lee in his most recent movie, and what did you think of that? Was it?
Well, my first reaction was that, hey, it's a movie. You can make Bruce Lee be whatever you want in your own movie. I don't care. And I like the ending of it, how he's, staved off this brutal murder. And I thought that was really clever. My problem with Tarantino came when he attempted to defend his portrayal of Bruce Lee on Joe Rogan's podcast. Instead of saying, hey, listen, guys, it's a movie. It's a movie. I could have had Brad Pitt's character beat up King Kong. It would be a movie. It doesn't mean it's real. But he didn't go that route. Instead, he said, well, Bruce Lee hated American stuntmen, and he was hitting stuntmen. So the producer called in a ringer, this judo Gene Lebell, to come and teach him a lesson. And
I knew Gene Lebell.
I knew Gene Lebell too, but I also know that story is utter bullshit. Because I knew Bruce's daytime diaries. I interviewed Lebell. Lebell told me he went to Bruce's school and they were going to work out there, but the mats were too thin, the tatami mats. So he had to go to Gene's school. Problem is, Bruce didn't have mats at all in the school. And number two, the school wasn't opened when Bruce knew Gene Lebell. The other thing was, Gene said, trained with him privately and secretly for an entire year. And yet Bruce never incorporated anything resembling what Gene Lebell did in terms of judo or wrestling. It was Bruce Lee was the kind of guy, number one, he was a hair trigger guy. And if you try to embarrass him on the set amongst his colleagues, there was going to be trouble. And Gene Lebell, for all his AAU wrestling championships, is a big, strong, powerful, capable grappler, no question about it. Very tough guy. But you have to understand, Bruce Lee's closing speed from 8 feet away was 5/100ths of a second. And what he practiced daily was finger jabs to the eyes, not to take eyes out, but to scratch the cornea. And he used to hang party masks that you would wear. And every night he'd do about 2,000 of those thrusts through the holes, the eye holes in that, till he got to the point where he could do that and the mask wouldn't move. So you've got 5/100ths of a second closing speed to the eyes. And that's his weapon. That's what he practiced. And according to Tarantino, Lebell picked Bruce up and carried him around the set. Okay, maybe he did. I don't know. Van Williams, who was the star of the set, was there for every shot, never told me that. The producer, Charles Fitzsimons, never told me that. That'd be a pretty major incident. But, the reality is Gene Lebell did one episode of The Green Hornet, and it was episode 11. If this problem with stuntmen was occurring, why would you wait if you're the stunt director 11 episodes before you do something about it? And number two, the film world. If I'm the producer of the show and Bruce is hitting stuntmen and causing problems, and I find out that you have called in a ringer, a tough guy, to teach my co-star a lesson, you won't work on this in Hollywood again. You're done. Because if you hurt my guy, he's out. It costs the production money. Not going to happen. And if you're an aspiring stuntman like Gene Lebell, you're not working again. So the whole story to me is complete and utter nonsense. And the other thing is, when I worked at the estate, I had access to Bruce Lee's daytime diaries, and they were very comprehensive. I knew and could see who he met with, what he did every day of the week from 1966 to 1973. Interestingly enough, Gene Lebell's name doesn't show up once. Not once. He didn't have his phone number, didn't have the address of his school. And that to me is very suspicious for someone that Lebell claims went to his school for an entire year to train.
So Lebell's fibbing.
Yeah.
He was fibbing. Well,
you got to understand about Lebell too, though, is that this guy, he's he's a self-promoter par excellence. He came from the wrestling background. His mom was in the wrestling background. So he knows how to play the heel, right? And this does not diminish. This is the problem I have with martial arts. Most martial artists feel that they can't advance themselves without diminishing someone else. I saw it with Chuck Norris, saw it with Bob Wall, saw it with Gene Lebell, I saw it with Jun Rhee. The guy who impressed me the most from a grappling perspective in martial arts is a guy named Hayward Nishioka. He was a 4-time AAU champion. He was a Pan Am gold medalist in judo. And a black belt in karate, Shotokan. This guy is like, if you want a judoka, this guy's as good as it gets. And like I say, he won the AAU title twice as many times as Lebell did. So he was good. And he told me, he said, there's nothing I could do on Bruce. He would shut me down before I could do anything. And he said, and finally I got so frustrated, he said that I told him, I said, you know, my world is the ground. That's where I dominate. He said, what would you do if I lay on the ground and you had to come to me? And he said, Bruce looked at him and said, well, I wouldn't do anything. I'd just walk away. But then Bruce said, but don't get up. You know, and that's the thing. Bruce was a striker. He knew that if he was up against a guy like yourself, that if you grabbed him, it's 50-50 now. And it's probably going to favor you because you're bigger and stronger. So he wasn't interested in getting in a roll and submission type thing. His thing was, how do you end this as quickly as possible? And what he went for were the things that didn't get stronger through training: your throat, your eyes, your groin, your knee. Those were his targets. And he had no interest in sport competition. He was, for whatever his reasons, he was interested in how can I defend myself in the street, because that's where something's going to go down. And I compiled recently, going through all the interviews that I've done and the research I've done of his street record, and he was 36-0. And as far as sparring goes, you can throw another 27-0 on that, because he sparred professional boxers like Joey Orbio. He sparred heavyweight karate guys like Joe Louis, grapplers like Hayward Nishioka. No one ever got to him. So,
but grappling is so sophisticated now. How do you think he would have fared against an in his prime MMA guy who's got great grappling and great striking?
It just depends. I mean, again, at grappling, it's true that that's changed. And you've got Brazilian jiu-jitsu now, and you've got mixed martial arts. So you got guys who can kick, they can strike, they can grapple. These are dangerous guys. But the thing that with Bruce is you're still dealing with a human being. You know, let's say this guy's got this great grappling knowledge, and you take his eyes out. Now what do you got? You got a sitting duck. And the problem, Bruce also understood lag time. So if I move to you to strike you, your subconscious is immediately processing what's going on before it formulates what a response is, either stepping back out of the way, intercepting me, maybe blocking me, maybe hitting me. All these things are going through your subconscious, and that takes time. Not a lot of time, but it takes time. And Bruce knew that. So when he launched an attack, it was non-telegraphic, and again, a closing speed of 5/100ths of a second, and probably going for your eyes. And now you got to respond to it. That's tough for anyone, no matter what your discipline, to deal with. How would he do in an octagon? Not well. You've taken away most of his tools. You can't bite, you can't eye gouge, you can't kick in the groin, you can't kick a guy in the head when he's down. You've got a referee that's going to step in if it gets one-sided. You got a corner man, you get a rest. I mean, that wasn't his world, you know. As he said, once you strap on gloves, you're dealing in rules. And his idea was that fighting, qua fighting should be no rules. It's whatever you need to do to survive. And that's how he trained. And unlike a lot of people that pay lip service to that concept, he lived it. I mean, this guy trained like an MMA fighter, but not just for 8 weeks prior to a big bout. He trained that way 365 days a year. So he was psychologically, there was something going on there, because he always anticipated a fight. There's always going to be a fight. Whoever he saw, he was measuring the guy up. When he went out to eat lunch I remember Mito Uehara used to publish Black Belt magazine telling me he had lunch with Bruce, and during lunch, Bruce would be going, and Mito was going like, Bruce, what the hell are you doing? You know, and Bruce said, sorry, I'm looking at the guy behind you eating there, and I'm trying to come in on the half beat when he's moving his fork to his mouth. So again, it was broken rhythm. It was all fight related stuff. He would sit in his office and have 2 tape recorders hooked up to a headset, and one ear loud traffic noises, airplanes taking off, and the other one the slow, soft drip of water. And he would crank the traffic noises up, but focus so he could only hear the water drop. And the reason he did that was that, by his explanation, was you are fastest and able to react the quickest when you're totally relaxed, when you're almost asleep. Mm-hmm. So if I can relax my mind, I can react much quicker. So this is not a normal guy, right? This is not a martial arts type of guy who, you know, hey, we had a good match, shake hands, and then go for a beer or something afterwards. This was a guy that was deadly serious about it, and good enough, despite what Norris et al. Had said afterwards, that they went to him for instruction. They might tell the media that he was just a movie guy, but a martial arts world champion doesn't go and study with a movie guy. And the only reason they would have gone to study with him is because Bruce would have told them or shown them what he had. So,
hey, I mean, Chuck Norris is the real deal, but when you see the two of them together, Bruce Lee makes him look like he's standing still. I mean,
yeah, no, and that's the thing. Like for me, I used to be a fan. I didn't know much about martial arts until I studied it, but I thought my eyes didn't deceive me. This guy's very good. It's exceptional. But then the martial artists came out like Chuck Norris saying, well, he was an actor. You know, I was a world champion. He didn't mention he was a world champion of non-contact, but he was a world champion. Bruce was an actor. Other guys would tell me how they, you know, taught Bruce how to kick. And another guy taught me how Bruce couldn't really fight. It was this and that. And it was only when I really got into my research on Bruce and saw documents within his estate, and that you could see the reality of it. People that claimed that they were tight with him and taught him, they're not even in his daytime diaries. People that, you know, they claim they taught him how to kick high, and then I see footage of him in, you know, 1962 kicking above his head. And it's like, well, you didn't meet him till 67, so how'd you teach him how to kick high, you know? But it seems to be an attitude, and you probably experience this in martial arts, that everybody's sifu or everybody's sensei is the deadliest guy on the planet. You know, he can kill anybody, and you don't want to get on his bad side. And same thing, he didn't compete because he was too lethal and he's going to kill you and all this sort of nonsense. Bruce Lee was a guy that a lot of martial artists would cross the street when he came down, which is odd because he's 5'7.5" and $138. But he was, as Bob Wall told me once, he said, you know, it was with Bruce, he said it was not the size of the dog in the fight, but the size of the fight in the dog. And there was a lot of fight in Bruce Lee. And I almost think it's a primal thing in a fight. It's why we tend to have almost a reflex that if a guy is bigger, you walk a little softer, because you know in a subconscious level what kind of energy output you're going to have to engage in to surmount that. And it's the same thing. You know, guys, I'm sure you do, guys that you can see in their eyes that you don't want to mess with this guy. You know, Sonny Liston apparently was like that. Mike Tyson and his friend Roberto Duran was like that. You just knew that you were in a lot of trouble, and you'd better be willing to have the fight of your life and output the most amount of energy you've ever output in your life just to emerge unscathed. And I think we can read that. We've all, you know, been around people when a tough guy, a legitimately tough guy comes in, and you just know this is not a guy you're going to take lightly. And I think Bruce Lee was like that as well. He reminds me of Roberto Duran, actually. There was that savagery to him when he went. And anyway, I'm sorry, it was a long-winded rant, but
yeah, I haven't wanted to interrupt